Hello everyone, Alex here again with another of these image review sessions, and I've got some more pictures from the Cayman Islands to show you. I think all the pictures in this batch are all taken with the Z8, and these are a bunch of pictures that I processed for my recent talk about shooting the Nikon Z8 underwater. And so if you've seen that talk, you'll have seen these pictures. But I'm not going to specifically talk about the Z8 in this. I was actually going to talk about the photographs and what I was shooting and that sort of thing. As always with these review sessions, I like to look at the pictures critically and sort of say, what I like about them, what I didn't like about them, etc. So let's get going. There's 29 pictures, so I'll whiz through them reasonably swiftly, especially the first one, because although it's a great shark, it's obviously a small plastic shark. This shark's only about the size of your hand, and it's a model that's we use for photographic shots in the pool when we're doing the workshop. It's a very good macro model, and this is a wide angle macro picture. This is a picture that I showed in the talk to show that the Z8 with a modified 105 lens works really well with the MWL system. And you can see how sharp the result is. I mean, the eye is really, really sharp in this picture. So, oops. Let me try and click onto the eye and show you. I'm struggling a bit here. There we go. So you can see how sharp that eye looks like. Looks a bit like Antarctica, the middle of the eye there. Or to me anyway. Right. So on to the next one, right? So proper diving for the rest of the pictures. These first two shots are from a dive site called Anchor Point. And this is a shot taken from inside the swim through at Anchor Point, looking out and above. I don't think this sponge is really a perfect shot. When I was shooting this, I was actually really struggling to see through the EVF. It was a very unusually bright or contrasty situation of a very dark cave. The opening that I'm shooting through is actually too small to swim through, although it doesn't look it in the photo. And so you're in a very dark environment with the sun streaming straight into the lens, and that was a situation that the camera's EVF really didn't like at all. And so I couldn't really see very much when shooting this. So I don't think the composition is particularly good. I think Eliel's doing a good job with the modelling, but I'd like to have probably had the sponge a bit bigger, because I think that sponge, the yellow-orange sponge, is a bit small in the frame. And I think I'd like a little bit more of the top part of the picture, so that the cut in the reef feels smaller. I think it's too big, and I particularly don't like how it runs off the top of the frame in the top right. I think it would have been nicer to have the picture to have had a more cavey environment. Our next picture is a wide-angle scene from the wall at Anchor Point, and it's a very lush part of the wall. You've got black coral centrally, you've got brown tube sponges, orange elephant ear sponges, red rope sponges, deep water sea fans, fairy basslets, and I think that's anything else. There's a black cat basslet there, you can see in the middle. You see that? I'll zoom in on him. This is shot with the 24-70 and the FCP lens. So which I was just using it as a fisher on this dive, but it gave some really nice results on the reef. This is just a nice lush area of reef. I think I was also I think I would like to have come a little bit more further round to the left and got the orange elephant ear sponge a little bit bigger in the frame, but I think there were other divers around, and I think one of the reasons we don't go to Anchor Point that much on the workshops is the site does get it's quite a small area of lushness, and therefore it gets a little bit congested with a dozen or so photographers in the water. The next shot is just a standard shot, a picture I took of Eliel with a yellow tube sponge. I just wanted a picture of a photographer shooting. She's shooting with a 90mm on the A1, and obviously she's not taking anything particularly interesting in this picture. I asked her to pose for this shot. She was shooting fish before this, and I just said, "Oh, come over here," to give the picture a little bit of background detail. And to sort of tell a story. I always feel I have a bit of a lack of photos of photographers shooting. And it sounds strange because they're always around, but actually when you end up on a photo trip with other photographers, you always kind of want them either small in the background so the camera doesn't look too big, or you often ask them to put the camera down on the sand and model for you. And so you very rarely take a nice shot of someone actually taking pictures. So that was sort of what when I had this, we were just up in the shallows, doing multi-level dive. There wasn't such amazing scenery there, and it was a good chance to grab a shot like that. This picture is taken at a dive site called Snapper Hole, and the caves on that site are really nice because they're really full of fish, certainly to a Cayman level full of fish, and it's a nice chance to shoot some portraits. I like this picture because porkfish, which is the main fish in this picture, are very rare in the Cayman Islands. Very common in other places, lots of them in the Bahamas, in Florida and many other places, but you never see them in the Cayman Islands, and so I wanted a porkfish photo having seen this one. And then I particularly like how the two snappers, the two schoolmaster snappers, are posing above, and I quite like the two fairy bass that's in the background, but it's particularly those two snappers having the three fish in the frame works well, all giving good eye contact, not really overlapping except obviously where the two snappers overlap, but I think that's part of their charm because there's that repetition of the two faces. So yeah, I like that picture. It's kind of a bit of a strange one in that it's just because it's complex, but I think I like it. These are just some Reef wide angle shots taken shooting on the Reef wall in the morning with the sun silhouetting the north wall of Grand Cayman, and shooting some of the rich coral life. I've got a lot more of these to process, but I just processed these out for the talk. This is very close to the other picture. It's just kind of the next outcrop along, but a nice rich colourful section of the Reef, and Elio swam above here giving me a silhouette to just liven up the background, because this is kind of the top outcrop of the Reef, so you don't really get any reef structure behind, whereas this shot here is a little bit deeper, so being down from the edge of the Reef you can obviously use the edge of the Reef as a background. This was a fun macro shot. This flamingo tongue was eating this piece of coral, and there was just the very last bit of the coral left, and you can see it's creeping along here, munching its way along, and it's nearly run out of food and it's nearly run out of coral as it works its way along here, grazing the coral back down to its skeleton, the soft coral. This is just a detail shot of it's a type of barrel sponge. I think it's a branching barrel sponge, but I'm now can't remember exactly what the whole animal looked like, but pretty sure this is a branching barrel sponge. It's quite a big area. Might be a netted. No, it might be a. Anyway, I'm probably the only person who cares what it is, but it is. I think it's definitely a barrel sponge, and I'm pretty sure it's maybe it's a branching barrel sponge. We'll see, and it branching tube sponge even. Anyway. I really like the pattern. It was just a really unusual pattern, and that's what drew me in to take it, with these big black holes across a really colourful, clean texture of sponge. I would have loved it if there'd been a nice goby or something hanging around in this area. That would have been a really fantastic shot on this just completely bizarre looking background. But the background was enough for me for this shot. I really like collecting pattern shots, and the yellow and black of that shot really eye-catching. This is a flamingo tongue on a sea fan, and the eagle-eyed of you will have spotted there's another little cowrie or siphoma here on there with it, just sitting above it, which I didn't see when I was shooting. When I first started shooting this, because I was shooting it a bit tighter, and then I spotted it in one of the photos when I was just checking the sharpness, and then it expanded my composition to get it. But yeah, that's one of those ones where I was like, oh, I'll go and shoot this flamingo tongue, and then in the middle of shooting it, spotted there was something else. There were actually a lot of juvenile flamingo tongues everywhere on Cayman when we were on this trip, and I know Elio's got lots of shots of those as bycatch in pictures, where she's got a big one and then nearby there's 2 or 3 little babies around, which are kind of quite cool in the photos. Some blue chromis. These are just a little gang of them. I like this is very much kind of a harmonious colours type picture, where it's a very limited colour palette of the picture, and being sort of blues and cyans, it's a very restful colour palette as well. So it's a really nice sort of study in blue. And I think this picture here, if you sort of juxtapose it with, say, one like this one, and you just could go between them, there's a massive impact. So it's a very nice one to use in a slideshow or something, where you can really go from this to like a full colour shot. Parrotfish racing along the Reef. I took this picture really to talk about autofocus and the fact that parrotfish, particularly the greens of parrotfish, DSLR autofocus really didn't like. And you'd take pictures of parrotfish and the face would never be in focus. And the mirrorless cameras just eat these up for breakfast. They're relatively easy shot to take as long as you get it in frame. And just using auto area autofocus, it just picks up on the subject and focuses on the face. Which makes shooting them really well. It's a red-tailed parrotfish, this one. I really like shooting parrotfish as well because I think they're one of the first reef fish that we learn to recognise, yet very few underwater photographers spend any time photographing most parrotfish because they never stay still, they're not particularly cooperative subjects, so you don't see a lot of pictures of them. So I always make an effort of shooting parrotfish, as you'll know if you've watched any of these review sessions. A brittle star here on a strawberry vase sponge. I really like the colour of the vase sponge, and the brittle star just adds some extra texture to it, which I think is pleasing photographically. These next couple of shots are from a day trip we made to Little Cayman. Ocean Frontiers at the East End, where I run my workshops, have got such nice boats these days that if we get a nice calm weather forecast, we can do a full day trip, and we get up reasonably early, we get on the boat, we have breakfast on the boat, and wait about an hour after breakfast, and we've arrived at Little Cayman. And then we do 3 dives in Little Cayman, with sort of 45-minute surface intervals between them. The nice thing of Little Cayman is you can multi-level the dives. It's not very heavy diving on the computer. And then we head back to Grand Cayman and get back there in the late afternoon. And it's a really cool trip, and it's something that we price in to all my Cayman workshops. And whenever we get a weather window, we go for Little Cayman. And so it just adds a really nice element to the diving. The diving in Little Cayman, the reefs are more colourful and richer than Grand Cayman, and the wall is more spectacular. But they are also quite repetitive dives. And actually, after 3 dives, people are quite usually saying, can we go back to Grand Cayman now? Little Cayman is amazing, and 1 day of it is a perfect amount during a week. So yeah, we always really enjoy going over there. The sponges are fantastic. There's definitely more fish and lushness to the reef life to Grand Cayman, and being so shallow, you can go down over the reef and you really have layers and depth of reef above you. This is some of the fish lights on Grand Cayman. These shots are all shot with the FCP. So the 24 to 50 on the Z8 with the FCP on. Shooting these shots, it's a really flexible lens, so you can do lots of different things during the dive. I also had access to the Nauticam WACP on this trip, which I don't WACP2, which I don't own. But I was able to borrow one for the trip, and the reason I don't own one is I just feel it's just too big to travel with. But I do really enjoy using it. I hadn't shot it for a few years, and I really enjoyed using it in Cayman. I used it in Little Cayman. I used it. This is another shot from Little Cayman. It's a much more rectilinear look to the pictures, so it's good to compose them in slightly different ways, I feel, to a fish I shot. And it always takes me a little while to adapt my compositions. But I think this year I'd thought about that a little bit more before shooting it and shot it better than I had previously. This is the WACP as well. Just a silhouetted shot of the caves and caverns. And this is a WACP shot, but zoomed in a little bit just to fill the frame with these blue striped snappers sitting under a nice overhang, with good colour in it. This is at Snapper Hole, which does have really nice colour in the overhangs and fish. And then this is the same lens, but on at the Kittiwake. And this photo, the divers in this picture are my friends Tom and Maxine, and they were celebrating their wedding anniversary on this day. So I thought I'd sneak up behind them and grab a picture of them to give them as a wedding anniversary present. So I took this picture of them approaching the reef together at the beginning. I think it was at the beginning of our dive. They were together going towards the reef, and I snuck behind them and got a picture of them on their anniversary. So I've given them the high res of that now, so they can get it printed. And then these are some other shots I took. I set the Z8 to be black and white in the viewfinder for a portion of this dive, so I was enjoying shooting available light black and white shots and really visualizing how the light was and how the black and white looked by obviously having the EVF in black and white and tuned so that it mimicked how I was going to probably process them afterwards. So they really looked amazing through the camera. I should have shot some video really as a demonstration of how cool it looked. This is on the same dive, but I've gone back to shooting colour, and I turned my strobes on at this point. And this is just well, as you can see, it's the other direction view of that same scene. I'm on the bottom right of this picture looking back the other way, and there was a nice group of horse-eyed jacks cruising through. And you can see there's a lot of colour from the sponges now coming on the kittiwake, particularly on the shaded side, the underside, as it's tilted over into the sand. And anywhere where there's shade and a bit of water movement, you tend to get a good amount of sponge growth on the kittiwake now, which is really nice. This is control room at the back that looks out over the after deck. And this is shot with WACP2 as well, so these are on the same dive. I then switched over to the A1 for the second dive on the kittiwake, but I've not processed any of the other pictures from that, so all those kittiwake shots are from the same dive. This next shot is from a dive trying to see the sharks that live on the reefs at the east end. The summer isn't usually the best time for us to see the sharks in Cayman because it's their mating season, and they mate usually in late July, and we were there in early August, and we were expecting not to see any, because after the mating, because it's obviously quite traumatic the way sharks mate, because the males, the only thing they've got to hang on to the females with are their teeth, and shark teeth are pretty sharp, so the females get pretty traumatized by it, and they all tend to just disperse and heal for a bit before coming back to their normal habits. So it often means we don't see many when we go to the dive site that they usually are on in the summer. But this year, for some reason, even though the water was warmer and everything else was running early, the sharks were mating late, which was unusual. This is one of the sharks. I like this shot. This is shot with the 24 to 50 mm lens on the Z8, but with the Nauticam WWL-C wet lens for it, which is a small, lightweight wet lens, which I'd not used before, but I was really impressed with it. It worked really, really well. My wife there, you can see she's shooting the A1 with the WACP on it, which is ACP1, which is a much higher quality optic. But I was really happy with this. I was, if I had a Z8, I would be angling about using this alongside the FCP, of course, when that comes out. This is a shot, actually, of my brother and his girlfriend on the sandbar, just with some stingrays. I sort of took this, so they had a nice shot of themselves. The stingrays weren't being overly cooperative, but I did get a shot with them and multiple stingrays in the picture. And here is these are some more black and whites done in the caves and caverns. I think there's a couple of these, and I had the camera in black and white mode again, which was really nice for this environment. And I think it's really, having the camera in black and white mode and having it so it's showing the settings effect on the viewfinder, it's a really nice way of shooting these pictures. You can really get your exposures exactly where you want them, and with black and white, where perhaps you're going to much more overexpose your backgrounds than your white water than you would if you were shooting in color. And I think that I really like that way of shooting black and white underwater. It's a very, very cool way of shooting black and white. You really see exactly what you're getting when shooting that way. So yeah, it's something I really like about the mirrorless cameras. And then the final shot is a stingray shot. It was actually a relatively calm day, and I've got all these shots where the surface is flat. And then this one, it just seems so much more interesting, where this little wave is. This wave is probably produced by me turning the camera more than at the sea, because it was so calm. And it's created this wave on the dome port. But actually, I really like the shape that the wave has created on the surface here. So this ended up being the picture of the rays I chose to process with these three cruising past at Stingray City. And that's shot with a fisheye, with the 8 to 15 mm fisheye on the Z8 with the Matty Smith dome. This one was shot with the 14 to 30 mm rectilinear lens, but with the same dome port. Right, hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight into some of my Cayman pictures. Like I say, these are only just the first few I grabbed out, mainly to process for my presentation, but hopefully that's given you a bit more insight into the backstories behind some of those images. So I'll speak to you again soon when I'm back from Galapagos, which is where I am right now when this goes out, and hopefully we'll have had an exciting trip and have some really interesting images to show you. But you never know with Galapagos. It always amazes, and often it yields some incredible images. So I look forward to hopefully having some really exciting stuff to show you in the next ones of these. I also still have a lot of Red Sea and Cayman stuff to process out as well. So I think the next few of these might be quite mixed up between those destinations. Okay, bye for now.